Okay, so getting back to we had discussed briefly, you were talking about books. If you could take just one book with you, say to Gaza, for the children to read, what book would that be?
Autobiography of Malcolm X.
And what would you want them to learn from that?
Um, it's hard. I think they already know in many ways. They're living that the definition of what Malcolm explained regarding, for example, freedom.
Mm-hmm.
They're living that every day. Malcolm said, if you're not willing to pay the ultimate price for it, then take out your vocabulary, the word freedom. Um, and and they have been paying the ultimate price in Palestine for too long. Um, so I can't teach them anything. I only could learn from people there. And having been there uh, in Gaza and feeling the energy of people, even in a state where they're effectively facing death and destruction and oppression and suppression, all those things every day. To, yeah, they're far more alive than people I surround myself with or anywhere else I've been. And and there's that energy from people who struggle, and I don't know how to account for it. I mean, I was watching a documentary on Nina Simone a while back, and she was asked, "Why is it to be free, or what is freedom?" Something to that effect. And she replied, "It's a feeling,"
Hmm.
and I think I've experienced that feeling when I was there. So I never felt more alive or more, I could face the world, me against the world kind of thing. I was, I had no other concern than just to be there when I was there. I was fully kind of, uh, it's like a magnetic force or something. I don't know how to
Uh-huh.
explain it.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Anyone who's been there and been there in a sincere way would know that. So they're just amazing people. Um, and so yeah, like I said, I couldn't teach them anything. I'm not so full of myself and not so arrogant to think I could teach people who are actually living the struggle. I mean, we have our struggles in the West in different ways, right? Coming from minorities or working class families or whatever, um, but not to that extent, nowhere near. So I'm only going to learn from people in that situation, and that's all I hope to do.
Mhm.
Learn to be better. Somehow, learn the certain traits I could share with others. And I mean, the thing is, there's quite active support here for Palestine in Bradford. Throughout the world, it's a growing thing. I've noticed that, but we still don't do enough. Nowhere near. Um, there's all these BDS campaigns and all this kind of stuff, and many of us don't even go to that extent.
Mhm.
So it's nice to suggest you care about something or you support a cause, but it has to be real terms.
Mhm.
Um, and not just a sense of self-appeasement that many people have. Um, you know, it's not going to free anyone. It's not going to help anyone by just sharing a Facebook post or changing your profile picture or something to a
Exactly.
Palestinian flag. Um, and I feel that same way about myself.
Mhm. From the struggles that you have seen in Gaza compared
Mm.
to what we're going through in the western part of the world, with some of the uprisings and oppression that's going on here,
Mm.
the people in Gaza have real strength and tenacity in their
They
struggle.
do. So, mm.
What would you say is the major differences that you see between the two struggles?
Well, recently, just to give you an example, I mean, we had obviously the situation in Baltimore and Ferguson, that kind of thing in the States. Um, and when I saw some of the images, um, it didn't seem too much different. People being gunned down and kids throwing stones at basically tanks, armed forces that were sent in to kind of dispel people from expressing how they feel of injustice. Um, so there's many kind of similarities, I suppose, in that way. But uh, and every form of oppression is equally reflects an indignation on my part, any injustice. But that so similar in that respect, at least. But then the level of crimes perpetrated on uh, oppressed peoples, like people in Palestine or Kashmir, places like this, um, and many a time it doesn't even make the news, right? It's not, and much of the kind of images that you might see on social media, you will not see uh, on TV, television, terrestrial. So you don't realize. Well, you may not realize the level of oppression that's taking place, and some of the images. Just thinking about them, just even now, uh, they scare me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different level of dehumanization, and it's not only just the practice side of it. It's been happening for decades, right? So um, like I said, we're afforded certain rights in Western countries. There's no free society in the true sense anywhere, I suppose, in the world. But what's happening with I mean, just this idea of a blockade. You could blockade people. Just in the 21st century is shocking.
Yeah.
But then again, it's happened to Cuba, right? But then, um, you know, I'm just anti-empire, anti-imperialist um, on every level possible. And my kind of roots ring deep in the sense that my grandfather was conscripted to the British Army. He fought in Burma during the Second World War. Um, and so, I mean, even when he came here, he came as effectively, I don't like putting it this way, but almost like an economic slave.
Mm-hmm.
Our lands were so ruined and so much taken away, stolen from us, that we had to venture out back to the motherland, i.e., the empire, back to the people who stole our all our wealth. And um, but like I said, I mean, it's similar but different.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that they're the same situations, but the cause is just as great. I mean, in that sense, that we want, just like that's why I said Palestine's not just an idea; it's a big idea, which is why, to me, opened my heart to so many different struggles around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, as much as and it inspires me, I don't believe I inspire anyone. It inspires me every day. 10 years ago, I was completely different to who I am now in my perspective of the world and everything. Um, and so it's opened different channels for me just to learn about other people and other people's cultures
Uh-huh.
and have a better understanding for them.
Mm-hmm. I was going through your photographs, and
Mm.
all of them are powerful and really inspiring and heart wrenching. There's this one photo of you and an elderly woman in Palestine, in
Mm.
Gaza,
Mm-hmm.
and you were holding her hand, and the look on your face was just, phenomenal. It was just so deep. Um, I believe it was the caption she had under it that she had just lost her husband and her sons. Do you recall that picture in that
Mm.
moment?
Yeah, I do. I do. I do.
Could you tell me a little bit about it?
Uh, it was the night before we came back. Uh, when I say we came back, we were told to leave by the Egyptians. Um, it's funny that how it's like the French telling someone who's travelled to the UK to leave in the UK. It's just that's how the Egyptians work. So um, because I went as part of a convoy of around, it was initially 100 people, but then by the time we actually made it 6 weeks later, there was only about 30 of us that got into Gaza. And they put a restriction on us, so they said, you all have to be out at a certain time. That means everyone. And if you don't all come out at the same time, so there's one person short, then none of you get out. That's the kind of way they operate. And so we were under constant pressure. And I remember when we finally got in to Gaza, it's just overwhelming that I never thought I'd make it there. And I'd taken some contributions from people, about $3,500 US in total, that I promised to give to people in the refugee camps. So when we arrived, that was something I really needed to do, and thankfully the authorities there supported that. And me and my friend Salim, who was with me on the trip, we went to the beach refugee camp in Gaza. So we were going around the poorest families, and he captured that image. I was talking to this dear old lady, reminded me of my grandmother, and of course I don't understand Arabic, so there was an official there who was translating, and I was telling the old lady that I'm honoured to kind of meet her, and just her lines on her face, they said it all. If she didn't say a word or nothing was kind of, even if it was lost in translation, what was being said, I felt a real outpour. It kind of made me break down. I don't want to do that now, but it made me break down. And my problem's always been, as a Muslim, I suppose all faiths teach this, but you should have a sense of connection with other human beings. And from my earliest memories, even today, when I go into the mosque and I hear the khutbah, which is the sermon at the mosque, they'd say things like, we're one body, and if part of the body hurts, the whole body's supposed to hurt. And my problem is I believed in that. So when I see people facing these challenges and losses and tragedy, I connect very deeply to that. So because of that reason, I couldn't contain myself. I broke down. And she said she'd pray for me, and I need it.
That's deep.
Just to do some good with my life.
That's really deep. That she lost her whole family, and she looked at you and said she would pray for you.
She lost. She said she'd pray for me.
It's beautiful.
That's what I mean by the energy from that place and that struggle and those people. I remember telling one of my Palestinian friends, I said, your people have become my people. And that's how I feel. And yeah, or we might be connected by faith or different aspects of faith, but it doesn't matter to me. They could be from Timbuktu, right? I don't. The cause is what connects me. I don't. It's like I remember Park was asked once about East or West, and he said he bangs for the principles, not for the territory. And I feel the same way.
Yeah.
It's the principles. It's the idea. The big idea.
So what message or advice or direction would you have for our brothers and sisters in America, people of color who are being massacred and brutalized by the cops and oppressed and fighting for their freedom and their lives?
That we have to resist. I think we find it across the board in so-called democratic states where there's a hierarchy and establishment, and they protect their interests. We have to learn to protect our interests, and the only way we could do that is to be united, even with our differences. And there's many differences. I mean, I have a brother, and many a time, we disagree politically or whatever. He's still my brother, right? And so wherever our differences are, we have to find. So like Malcolm said, right? We have a common enemy, so we have to find a common goal to unite on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at that way, it's not so hard, right? It's not so hard. We could find ways of challenging our energies and our efforts to a certain cause or principle, and in many ways share and learn from each other and be inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that'll open up a collective front, and that's what we need, because that's the only time when you could have any remnants of power, if you're united. And I think that's something we seriously have lacked. I mean, you find often even like the leftist sort of body in the UK. I mean, many people do, especially grassroots, do some really good work, but sometimes egos and all that kind of stuff comes in the way, and it kind of destroys all the good work we put in. And to me, that's very sad, because we could achieve so much more. And in many ways, I think, I'm not so. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I'm not. I don't believe in this idea that I think the struggle is going to be an eternal struggle. It doesn't end at any stage, and it's like someone once said: a revolution. The idea of a revolution is not like you accomplish something and it's over. It's something that's ongoing always.
Mm-hmm.
And so our struggle for our rights, our human rights, our equal rights, I think that'll exist forever. As long as the human beings will be human beings who will try to ensure that there are people below them and people who have to. Because that's the only way. If you think about it, you could have a society where the 1% own whatever 70% of the wealth of the country, or even in a so-called first world countries, so-called civilized country, you could have crazy stats like that, and that can't be right. We only kind of allow them, whether we know it or not, we allow them to do that to us. And so as soon as we kind of establish in ourselves that collective effort, then I think we could face our challenges and hope to succeed.